What's up, fellow adult collectors? Welcome to SeViLion Collectibles. In this video, I'll be reviewing the Ghostbusters Plasma series from Hasbro. I'm going to go ahead and take the time to review the entire first wave all in one shot. So that's all four Ghostbusters: Peter Venkman, Ray Stantz, Egon Spengler, Winston Zeddemore, plus Dana Barrett and Gozer, leading to the Build-A-Figure, the Terror Dog, Vince Cortho. All of these characters are based on the original Ghostbusters film from 1984. I found my set at Target, but they should be widely available at other stores soon too. If this is your first time landing on my channel, hi, my name is SeViLion, and here I like to discuss action figures and other collectibles based on my favorite movies, TV shows, and video games. If you find this video enjoyable or informative, please give me a thumbs up, don't forget to subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Since I'm doing so many figures at once, it won't be quite the same as my typical reviews, but it'll still be pretty close. As you can see, I'm starting with the actual Ghostbusters themselves, and we'll do the other characters later on. For the most part, their bodies use about 90% of the same sculpts, but there are some differences here and there. For instance, Ray Stantz was a little overweight in the film, so he does have a little bit of a pudgy gut sticking out. Beyond that though, his appendages are pretty much identical to what most of the other figures have. Egon was taller than the rest of the guys in the group, so even his figure is slightly taller than the others, but I do think there should have been a little bit more of a difference than there is. That small height difference is all in the torso piece. Everything else about him and Winston are exactly the same from the neck down. Moving back over to Peter Venkman, his legs are unique among the group because his pants are not tucked into the boots like everybody else. So even though the characters do use most of the same parts, there's enough uniquely identifying pieces to separate each one. The body sculpts are definitely all highly detailed with all the zippers and pockets and flaps and folds all throughout the jumpsuits. The colors and paints of the suit are all really nice. I like how they added the shine for the boots and the gloves, but I do kind of wish they'd added some sort of wash over it to help bring out the details of the suits even better. And just so you know, the peg holes you're seeing on their backs are for the proton packs. Finally, I do want to state that all of their face sculpts do look really good. I would certainly consider them to be on par with most of the current MCU Marvel Legends. If I had to pick favorites, I'd say the best is probably Winston, and the worst is probably Venkman. He does look a little cartoony for some reason. Even with that though, they still look really good to be based on a movie from over 35 years ago. Next, I'll give you a good look at their accessories, starting with the proton packs themselves. Each one is identical, with absolutely nothing changing from one to the next. Each one is sculpted and painted really nice. I love that you can see all the different electronic components coming off of it. The corded blaster is no different, and it does plug onto the pack when not in use. Its sculpt is just as detailed as the main pack, even down to having buttons and hand grips. I'm going to zoom back in on the pack itself, just so you can see how detailed it really is. Even on just the proton packs themselves, you can really see just how much passion and effort went into making the Plasma series. And of course, they look even better once each Ghostbuster has them strapped on. Beyond the proton packs though, each character did also include their own unique accessories as well. Peter got the ghost trap, Ray got the lights headband, and Egon got the scanner. Egon and Ray both got places on their belts to hang theirs when not in use, but Peter does not. Finally, Winston got the proton blast beam effect. This is something I thought should have come with all four of them. Back when I first saw the preview images for these, I imagined being able to have all four Ghostbusters aiming their beam at one particular monster. Instead, that won't be the case without buying these separately on the aftermarket. Now, for the purpose of articulation, I'm just going to stick to Egon, but the other three characters do basically move in all the same ways. The head has a decent range moving up and down, and full rotation side to side. The shoulders can spin all the way around as well as move backwards, plus they have butterfly joints to extend that motion front and back. The biceps have full rotation, the elbows are double jointed, and the wrists also have full rotation along with the pegs for side to side movement. The torso has a ball joint at the waistline for a decent range of movement. The hips don't really offer a very wide range sideways, but these guys weren't very athletic anyway. However, kicking front to back is way better. The thigh cuts do have full rotation, the double jointed knees do fold up pretty well, and the ankles have a full range of pivot motion. Next up, I'll give you a look at the female characters, Gozer and Dana Barrett. As far as I can tell, they do basically use the same framework, and then of course Gozer has the added details for her suit, and Dana has the dress. Much like the Ghostbusters themselves, these two do look like they walked straight out of that 1984 film and onto my desk. It might be hard to see on camera, but Gozer is covered in sculpting detail between the bubbles and different cracks and other effects all over the suit. On Dana, the dress is sculpted really well and even multi-layered in some places. I really like how the sculpt work on her is a mix between being the main body and also outer layers on top of that. I think that provides a much better presentation to the overall aesthetic. Unfortunately, the only real accessories between them are the lightning hands that came with Gozer. They do look pretty cool though, and are fairly similar to many of the effects that come in the Power Rangers Lightning collection. For the women's articulation, I'm going to keep Gozer in the forefront because she is the best overall representation, but Dana will have some issues with her dress getting in the way in some of these points. The head has a decent range up and down, and of course 4 rotations side to side. The shoulders can spin all the way around, plus move outward. The elbows are single jointed, but do have a rotation at that point. The wrists also have 4 rotation, plus hinges for back and forth movement. There's a ball joint in the upper torso for a wide range of rotation and other movement, plus an ab crunch for back and forth. The hips can spread out pretty far sideways, but don't do quite as well kicking front to back. Thigh cuts do offer full rotation, the double jointed knees do fold really well, and the ankles do have a full range of pivot motion. So with all 6 of the main figures looked at, now it's time to go over the Build-A-Figure. It looks cool, the sculpting detail and paintwork isn't too bad, but I feel like it could have been better. Like, it almost looks a little too plain to me. If they were to re-release this figure as a standalone piece like they have with many Build-A-Figures in the past, I don't know that it would hold the standard to be worth the extra purchase. In my opinion, there's a fairly significant drop in quality between one of the mainline Ghostbusters and this figure. Maybe that can just be attributed to what the character is, but I don't know. The articulation is somewhat lacking, but I'll run through what it's got. The part with the most available movement is the head, with the ball joint in the neck and a hinge at the jaw. I'm going to describe the front legs kind of like arms. The shoulders do spin all the way around and move outward. The elbows are single jointed with rotation at that point, and the wrists also have 4 rotation plus a hinge for up and down movement. The hip joints can only move back and forth, and when you get down in the lower part of the leg near that horn sticking out of the back, there's another joint that acts kind of like an elbow joint, and the feet also have that full range of pivot motion. I know there have been other Ghostbusters lines in recent years, such as Diamond Select and Mattel, but I never got any of those, so I don't have them to compare to. Instead, I'll just compare to some lines that I do have, that way you can see how small these unfortunately really are. Starting with more Hasbro, the Power Rangers Lightning Collection, and Marvel Legends. This is where my frustration with their size really began, because I would hope that Hasbro would keep their scaling somewhat consistent between their lines. If you just look at Egon and the White Ranger, Harold Ramis was well over 6 foot tall, and Jason David Frank is just under 6 foot tall. So why is Egon shorter than the White Ranger? I know when going from one franchise to the next, they don't have to keep it to scale, but man, I really wish they'd have made the Ghostbusters just a little bit larger. Now, just in case you don't have any of those, I'll run through some other lines that you might have so that you can still see the difference. From Mattel, I have the DC Multiverse Shazam on the left, and the WWE Ultimate Edition Ronda Rousey on the right. From NECA, I have Raphael on the left, and Tiffany on the right. From McFarlane Toys, there's the Mortal Kombat version of Spawn on the left, and the DC Multiverse Wonder Woman on the right. And finally, from Storm Collectibles, there's Sub-Zero on the left, and Hayachi on the right. So, with all that said, it's time to run the Hasbro Ghostbusters Plasma series through my guidelines for a complete and fair review. Each figure does feature enough unique parts to make each character stand out as their own. Plus, they are all highly detailed and incredibly accurate to the characters. All 4 of the main Ghostbusters themselves do have more than 20 points of articulation, but the women and the Build-A-Figure do not. These figures are pretty well in scale with each other, but if you wanted them to match up with anything else at the 112 level that you might have in your collection, you'll be sorely disappointed. All of the figures, except for Dana Barrett, did include their own accessories, but when you put the proton packs on the Ghostbusters, it does make them harder to balance, like I was constantly having to lean them a little too far forward in order to get them to stand. The roughly $20 price point is fair for this line, and if they're not already widely available in your area, they should be pretty soon and online. And finally, I didn't really have any quality control issues with my set, therefore leading my final score to a 7 out of 10 star rating, meaning they are still amazing and worth owning for all fans of the franchise. So while I personally can't say how they were compared to other lines in recent years, if you don't have those, these are still a great set to get. Even though I did complain about them being a little small, That's not something you'd really care about unless you intended to mix them in with other characters from different franchises. However, when displaying them totally on their own, they are definitely worth adding to your collection.